This is AV SuperFriends Off the Rails, an almost regularly scheduled open discussion on audio and video in higher education. We'll sound off about our most brilliant ideas, our dumbest mistakes, and everything in between. And because this conversation will almost certainly go off the rails at some point, we'll end up covering just about everything else. And now, the AV SuperFriends. For October 1st, 2021, it's the AV SuperFriends Off the Rails. Welcome back, everybody. Time for another Friday afternoon podcast adventure. We missed a few last month. We're trying to make up the time and do more every Friday this month, plus a bunch of stuff coming up at the end of the month. So you'll get more content from us.
Hold on.
My name's Chris Decter. I'm joined today by Larry, Mark, Jamie, and Justin. And Mark loves to step on intros every time, like clockwork.
It's my thing.
It is your thing. You like to throw that comment in before you get introduced.
And I'll throw in a little simple yo every now and then.
And Justin will throw in a yo. That's an extra yo. If you get two of them, it's a yo-yo. So today's show, we're going to discuss where AV fits in the larger IT organization. Or does it? Spoiler. We're going to discuss why touchless AV and touchless UI is a bad idea. Or is it?
Or is it?
Spoiler. But first, let's do the news. No, wait. Instead of the news, because we were going to do the news, we're going to talk in general topic about the news, about supply chain issues. Mark, I think this was your idea on kind of like, maybe we should start giving awards for this. So like, who's our biggest, what'd you call it? The biggest limiting factor of the month? Who's jamming up our projects right now? We've got all these things going, all this stuff, we're seeing, okay, it's 6 weeks, it's 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks. What are we running into out there as far as general supply chain issues, which are now starting to cause some real heartache?
It sucks. Just
all right, there you go.
The world is crumbling, and I can't get anything at this point. We are quickly burning through our stock of things we've had on the shelf, and we are being told by lots of manufacturers expect anywhere between 12 to 24 weeks before we can backfill. Rattle off a manufacturer, my answer is probably like, yeah, they're probably in that list. I know we probably all have that, everything for me. So it is a rough.
I think what
right
really, really sucks is that because it's kind of product by product, right? So it's just one or two pieces, but those are the pieces that make everything else go. For instance, one of the ones I've had issues with was touch panels, right? The 7-inch ones. Like I could get the 15. No. But it's a 7-inch touch panel. I have everything else. I literally can't deploy this thing because there's no touch panel. And I've been looking at, I've went so far as to pull out older button panels and like custom program it just to make it turn on and off. And people are not happy. They kind of get it, but they don't. And then I was on a conference call with our local integrator who we purchase all of our stuff through our regional box house, basically. And, they're in really tight spots because, they're trying to make a profit and they can't. I at least have stuff here, but he's like, man, you're looking at the minimum 12 weeks and we're pushing out to 18, 16 and 18.
You're on next cycle. You're next year, bud. Like you are. And
yeah.
Then, are you having those conversations?
By the time you get that stuff,
yeah.
It'll be time to think about replacing it too.
So
that's what kind of really sucks right now is because in 2 weeks we're going to start getting all that's no longer in stock because the new thing is coming. Mm-hmm. Right? Because of Infocom. It's like the new thing's coming, so you can't get those anymore.
But it's not coming until 2023. Yeah, right. It's you can't get that for another year.
It, so. And then it'll be released in 2 years.
Yeah. So is anybody else like Frankensteining a system and that's the final solution? Because I'm doing that. We had and it's not classroom. We do a lot of, audio and video work for all kinds of people, including athletics. And we have a project for a volleyball team. And it got started off weird because of budget issues or whatever. And we had to go to our stockpile of speakers. Like we have speakers that have probably been taped in a box that we had extra from a job 5 years ago. Like, let's use that. And then, there's an amp that we can use. Ooh, here's an auto mixer that we can use. That way we can get Bluetooth and everything. Okay, and then so that's the final system. And we're just going to cross our fingers that it doesn't blow up the next day after we sign off on it, right? So it's a gamble. And they're going to be happy in the short term. We'll see about long term.
I've had to Frankenstein a couple of systems, but for the most part, I had most of my gear for the larger projects already here. However, computer labs were transferred to my department during the summer. And so I had to go out and order 142 all-in-one computers. Guess what's not showing up for a long time?
Yeah. I've had that same issue. And so I've found that big, giant orders, they won't commit to the whole thing, and they'll give you a longer delay. But if you a la carte that and do them in smaller blocks, you can actually get some of that to trickle in.
Yeah, I've already told him, like, I will take partial orders just to get us through.
Yeah. One of the other things I've found, too. Oh, sorry, Justin, go ahead.
No, I had to submit, just for some microphones, I had to submit, on the integration side of business that I run, not for, higher ed stuff. I submitted individual POs for individual mic systems. So I need 7 wireless microphone packages, and I did 7 POs, and that stuff's coming sooner than if they waited for all 7 right? So it's a first in, first out kind of thing. So little trick there that might work for you.
Another pro tip. So in talking to several manufacturers, they are holding back a certain percentage of their stock for replacement. So if you have things that may be damaged or going to surplus, you can actually get them replaced faster than you can get something new. So keep that in the back of your pocket. If you have like a super critical thing and you need some type of, if it's a touch panel or whatever it is, keep that broken one, and actually it's more cost effective and faster to actually have it repaired with a new one they'll have on stock. So, it may not be the optimal solution, but let's get you something.
That's interesting as far as a strategy. And it makes good business sense for them to have stock, because if they shipped every one they could get, here's every display we can get and we ship it out, and then you have one that's damaged and you want it repaired under warranty and they can't get it to you, then that makes them look like chumps. So
wow.
I do want to say, speaking of displays, I talked with a supplier, and he said it's highly dependent on size of displays. For whatever reason, I don't know if you guys are running this or not, but for whatever reason, he said 75-inch displays are kind of the sweet spot right now from the purchasing standpoint of like size versus cost. That's where everyone likes to be. And he said, you can't get a 75 right now. That's a 12, 14 week lead time. However, if you want an 85, I can get that to you by Friday, sort of thing. So they just have them in the warehouse because they're more expensive. There is a significant price delta, but if you need something, they have that. And same thing on the lesser sides. So apparently 65s are tough. 85s in general, like high level, kind of general across the board, 85s and 55s and smaller, because again, people are like, I'm going to spend a little more money and get a bigger display, but so many people are doing that you can't get 65s for 6 weeks, but you can get 55s here on Tuesday, sort of thing. So I did that in a project that I was going to do 65s around the room for active learning, and I'm doing 55s and an 85 up front, and that stuff's all like ready to ship within the next 2 weeks, sort of thing. So
is that the concept of like people wanted the small one, but they think they're outsmarting the economy? But like, well, maybe if I go to the larger one, I can get it because everybody else got all the small ones. But
it's
now
just that cost. It's that cost ratio of size to dollars. Like, okay, if I'm going to be spending $3,000 or $2,000, then now I can get a 75-inch display. I'll get that. That sounds, it's a nice big display, sort of thing. But the 85, which is, you jump from $2,000 to $4,000 or something. But if I can, what's that worth than to have it here instead of I have to wait till January or potentially never, sort of thing. So yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys seen anything else out there?
It's rough.
Yeah,
Bluetooth's killing me. So $500 little Bluetooth adapters, for audio in gyms and cafeterias and different things like that. They're not really holding up the job. I mean, we got paid for it, but the client doesn't have their Bluetooth.
I found anything that's like that prosumer side stuff is real difficult to get. Like you're not gonna like the USB things and like that stuff. Like don't.
Well, it
must be the chipsets they're using or something.
Pro Bluetooth, if you call.
Is there such a thing?
Yeah. No, there's not.
Yeah.
And now we're getting people are yelling at their car stereos right now. But
that's right.
No, if you're deploying Bluetooth in your classroom, stop doing that.
No, it wasn't for classrooms.
I'm just saying it happens. There are places where it makes sense, but yeah. So I would say in general,
I've done that.
I've done it too, but like when we talked with Clay a couple of months ago about general stuff, be flexible in your designs.
Mm-hmm.
And Jamie, I think you probably had the biggest issue was like, hey, the control system, the control interface, which I have to use from manufacturer ABC because that's the one I need to use to support the processor and all this stuff. That really can't change, but pretty much everything else you could kind of, like we talked about, you could Frankenstein something together and make it work. So
something that we're doing because of the touch panel problem is just putting the UI on the computer for now. And it's not ideal, but they got full functionality.
That's
so it's one way around it, Jamie. Hint, hint. No,
he loves that idea. You can see.
He doesn't use
That's
that
too much work.
manufacturer.
No, and we'll get into that later.
Okay, all right.
I'm going to tease that one for later because it falls somewhere else in this show.
It's just a stopgap. It's not a
I
permanent
think
solution.
there's kind of a piece of this that I want to make sure we're talking about. So everybody's probably thought about, okay, yeah, we're going to do all this maintenance and deferred maintenance. But are you adjusting your forecast of what you think you may be doing next year because now you have to go and fix all the stuff that you didn't actually get to do correctly this year? And what does that mean to your life cycle? Are we borrowing from the future right now, trying to get things done today and cobbling things together in the Frankenstein way that we're doing? And what does that mean?
And by the same token, have you ordered your summer projects yet? I've never thought about ordering them this soon, but it's probably not a bad idea.
I just had to have that really difficult. We have 2 big construction projects coming up next summer, and I told them I had to be order ready by January. And they said, "You're out of your mind." I said, "No, listen." And I have people that already are looking at spending end of year money. So for us, fiscal years,
in June,
the end of June, some aren't, but for us it is. And I said, then you need to spend it in February. Well, we can't spend it that early. It's like you can't wait, or it crosses the fiscal year, and you have to worry about all of the. Some money counter somewhere is going to get upset because you crossed over the year just because we can't get it. And that's been a conversation where folks, they understand there's supply chain issues. They understand there's delays, but they don't understand. They're having a hard time understanding how one affects the other and how that affects their decision making. And in 2 of these building projects, they're so far behind that they barely even understand what the architecture is going to be, and they have to order stuff. It's been a balancing act for sure.
Well, Jamie, I don't think it's that they don't understand the ramifications of it. It's they recognize, yes, there are supply chain issues, but they're all affecting somebody else. This is my order, so this will come in regular time, right? You can make that happen. So, but you did raise an excellent point there. To everyone out there listening, plan for your summer projects now, and then plan for your end of year purchases now. Get that bug in the ear of some of these departments. You know who they are on your campus, who are kind of always have a little bit, they always got that extra $20 or $30 or $40 or $50,000 at the end of the year that they want to spend something. So start talking with them like between now and January.
Have them buy a truck so they can go get their product from somewhere.
So they have a plan, and it's not this last minute scramble of, we want to order a whole bunch of webcams, or we want to get a whole bunch of new video walls, or whatever it might be at your campus. And you know who they are at your campus, business schools. But get that bug in their ear now, so that they're starting to think about that, so that you can be ready, because the supply chain thing isn't going to fix itself. It will fix itself over the next 2 years or so from most forecasts, but it's going to be messy. And the sooner you plan that out, the less heartache you'll have in May when you get to tell everybody who has their end of year money that, great, you can't do anything with that, technology wise. So
it may be like understanding how your budget office really works. And so does that not get off the books until the product is actually received? Or is it spent? So understand your actual business process, and you may have to inform people and actually educate them that, yeah, I can order this all day long and pretend that I'm spending the money, but it's actually not actually spent until it's received.
And as we've seen, some manufacturers have even said, look, if we get POs for certain things, we're just going to cancel them. We're not even going to sit on those as if you've quote unquote spent the money. We're just going to cancel that order depending on what it is and based on their forecasting. So that's a good point, Mark, that, yeah, there's a difference between cutting a PO and ordering and actually, receiving and encumbering the funds. So that works differently at different institutions. So start that conversation now rather than wait until March and realize that, or April or May, and realize that you're really kind of up a creek. So that said, be flexible and plan ahead. And we're going to go to commercial.
There's a great new digital magazine from Higher Ed AV Media found at higheredav.com. And we do a special monthly show where we actually stay on topic. It's a show where we try to really focus on a single topic and break it down into AV SuperFriends style. That's the AV SuperFriends on topic, found at avsuperfriends.com, higheredav.com, iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and wherever else you get your podcasts from.
So first topic for discussion today is, as we teased in the beginning, is where does AV fit in the larger IT organization? I think we would all agree to start, and I want to lay the groundwork here to start that AV is IT. If AV is not IT, you're doing it wrong. However, that's a big matzo ball out there. There's questions as to where AV fits in IT, or does it? So, it's one of those things where I think depending on your institution, your organization, AV is part of, the client services or client support or whatever you want to call that, or technology services or computer support or networking, or in some cases you may have your own instructional technology or AV technology, academic technology group within your larger IT organization. And of course, yes, there are those outliers where you're part of facilities or you're part of the library or you're under the provost as an academic a unit, not part of the IT unit. But I think we would all agree that in general, it's safe to say that AV is part of IT. However, Mark, I'm going to turn this over to you here because you've been going through kind of some high-level reorg discussions, and you keep kind of running into these these speed bumps as far as how to socket IT into this, kind of an IT model of where we should live. So what are you finding out there?
So I will I'll start by saying, if you are in some type of organization called academic technology or whatever derivative of that, IT does not like your organization. And because you do some things that they don't think may be configured the best proper way, not that for better or worse, whatever it is. And the way I've kind of had this conversation a lot of times, and I think backing up, Chris, to what we first mentioned is AV IT, and I'd say a good chunk of it is, but not all of it is.
A conditional yes?
Yes, a conditional yes, and I'll break it down in the way I see it, and I've explained it this way to several folks.
Be sure to break it down the AV SuperFriends style.
Break it down AV SuperFriends style, off the rails style. But the traditional thing of AV, and I like to say that's dealing with the analog environment, right? We are capturing, digitizing, and once we digitize, yes, now we are IT, and we are distributing. The distribution of AV, I believe, is IT, but dealing with it in the actual physical space does not align well with the traditional IT stack, because the philosophy of having centralized services and being able to manage that stuff from one location all falls apart because you have an endpoint that's out in a room, whether it be a projector, a speaker, whatever it is, that's doing an analog job, right? And so therein lies that friction point of the IT organization. Wait, what do you mean you have to physically be in that space to do your job? That's not an IT principle. So how do you remedy that? And so therein lies kind of the staffing and the labor side of this equation, and having to revisit that a lot of times with leadership. It's like, hey, there's an on-site portion of this job that must be done. And all of a sudden it's like, it starts unraveling and they can't get it to fit cleanly in a silo. And you see that in a lot of institutions now. They're like, well, it is IT, but it isn't IT. And so I'm getting the sense there's that on-site thing. They're trying to figure out how can we get rid of that? Why? I don't want that. I don't want that in my IT stack. So I'm interested to kind of see where our different organizations, I think Larry, Justin, Jamie, you all have a different version. And I think this is a spectrum. It's not all or not. And that pendulum is swinging around, and it depends where you're at in your organization. Larry, I think you had some recent changes kind of coming your way as well, right?
Well, I mean, there's constant discussion about it, and it's a lot of what you're saying. Like, we don't fit cleanly in the typical IT understanding. In my personal department, we're under support, which I like that to a certain degree. And we also have learning technologies in the same group as us, which I really like that. But when I think of support, I think of not only the classroom emergencies, break, fix, we're going to go take care of this problem. I also relate that to, let's have a conversation with the instructor to figure out how they want to teach and how we can support that pedagogy. And just like you were saying, it doesn't fit neatly into the typical IT structure, it seems like, or the ITIL. I think that's a little that's where things get messy. And I'm noticing that too, that we're
Well, there's that reactive nature of IT that can happen, and for better or worse, is that we won't move boots until there is a problem defined, right? But a lot of what we do in AV is we are there needs analysis, creating solutions, deploying that solutions, and a lot of times in IT that is an off the shelf thing, right? Boom, we'll get our solutions or all that stuff that's deployed, and so now our staff and our resources are here to support. And when you said support, to me that's how much of your organization is aligned in the proactive side of what you do. And that's where it gets ugly, right? And so what do you mean you want to go out and you want to meet people and find out what all this is? Like, can't you just get that off the shelf? Like, how does that work?
So, I completely agree with you, Mark, but how does, and this is a question, how does the IT philosophy view replacing UPSs and network switches and having to go out in the field to figure out what just happened in their network closet, even though they have a camera in their network closet that can see in there and they have monitoring on their equipment, but they still have to have feet in that room because of some
but those
right?
feet that's a commodity, right? That's a labor item. I can hire somebody in to come do that. They do not need to be on my staff to do that.
So you're talking about just the pre-planning of deploying AV and how you have to be in the field because, what type of ceiling is that? I got to see it, or I've never been in the space before. I got to be able to be in the space to know what the AV solution will be.
I think a lot of the AV professionals that exist, they put on that IT hat because they had to. We had to make the use. If we're going to do this and do it in a scalable way, we have to adopt these IT skill sets. And they just so happened to adapt to it, right? We put on the skill. We went and got certified. We did the things we did. And maybe we weren't network technicians, but we can sure as hell play one on TV if we needed to. And so we're out there kind of wearing multiple hats where the philosophy is, we want to be flexible, adaptable, but should you be doing that? Is that replication of service, right? And that's where we start getting into these friction points as well. It's like, well, what do you mean you're out there, you're slinging projectors and hanging speakers, and wait a minute, why do you need to be a network admin? Like, how does that? And so they're confused. Like that's what this guy does. Why do you need to do that?
Why do you need to support the faculty when we have departments, academic technologies, and everywhere else who support the faculty? You should be supporting the classroom.
You know what's funny is that we got rid of our academic technology department a couple of years ago when IT downsized, and we split that group up. We got rid of people in that group, and then certain segments of, this person was working on the Blackboard server, so he's on the Blackboard group now, kind of in the database administrative side. So those functions are still there, but the entire group was blown up. So it doesn't exist on our campus anymore.
And I think you see that a lot of places, Justin. That you're not alone. I think that's if left to their own kind of decision-making process, IT will look at it and say, well, we can make the business case that we don't need this. Like this is not a needed service for our business. And so we can just get rid of it. And no news is good news.
And what's funny is
I think that's one of the ebbs and flows of IT is that on occasion, like kind of that will grow, the need for that will grow enough. They'll be like, hey, we should make our own group. Here's 6 or 7 people who do that. And then after a few more years, you're kind of like, well, actually, we could split them up and put them in these different organizations, and they would fit within these larger buckets a little more cleanly. So that'll come and go. So Justin, I would wager, 2 or 3 years from now, you'll come on and be like, yeah, now we're talking about making an academic technology group again. So
yeah, probably so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because I actually started in academic technology, and then they moved me under the networking infrastructure type group 10 plus years ago, because AV fit better over there, with the cable pullers and the phone people and all the communication people, right?
Again, it's transport, right? And so that you just kind of have that stack where you're like, you're looking at your layers and you're like, yeah, that's those people, this whole segment of our staffing, that's what they do. That's infrastructure.
And there's been, we're kind of we're in the IS umbrella, right? And we've been shuffled around a little bit. There's been some talk about reorganizing our structure, but more for like reporting managers than actual budgeting or departmental organization. It's more like, well, we don't really want to hire another manager, so you're just going to basically report. So it's more of a paperwork organization chart because we don't have personnel to cover all of the different areas. So they're talking about that. The only other thing that was kind of strange was that there's also been some scuttlebutt that the AV crew will kind of stay with the infrastructure, the networking people, and they'll still be under IS. They will not be under facilities or under. And IS is currently under the provost, but they're not their own group. So, but I would be pulled out as a design engineer and moved more into the planning and construction side.
That's like the more business administrative side, because that's more of a needs analysis, client-facing skill set where you're actually digesting what needs to happen and coming up with a plan in which the infrastructure folks can then act on, right? So that's the type of alignment we're seeing. I see it a lot of places right now.
And I can see that, but it seems like your support, where I'm assuming, Jamie, you're tier 3, tier 4 support at your university. It seems like you would lose some of that ability to shepherd and train up the next engineers who would come up.
Yeah. And that's that part where I was trying to set it out that a lot of these reporting things, it's just managerial paperwork reporting. It's not necessarily job tasks. So like my job task is still hand in hand, no matter where I've always been on an island anyway. I'm the only one that does what I do. But the expectation is still that we're hand in hand, we're all together, we're doing things. It just on the org tree, you have to report to somebody, and that's where. But functionally, how we operate
and that
does not follow who you report to. How you operate is
what you
how
do.
we all operate.
Right. So that's the graphic design problem, trying to solve how people are actually doing it. It's like that. Well, great. The org chart can look however it wants to look, but you're still talking about communication flow from like, the tasks and things. We have to operate. We know to be adaptable in that, and so it changes afoot, right? And so it's a matter of kind of
the
what
pretty
we report to.
tree is kind of it's so strange because it's just a paperwork tree. It's kind of like we all sit around at a lot of these universities and we fight over funding that none of us have ever really seen because it's all part of the same bucket. It's just whether this little droplet of water is moving or not. And it's like, but it's all still university money. So,
but that's the challenge. We
say that a lot.
You get into the minutia of the like the day-to-day operations still need to happen, right? And so you're talking about cultural change and who people are reporting to and who does your end of year appraisals and things like that, and who gives you your daily tasks. But fundamentally, it's like, is the work changing? Like, does what we do in AV, is it different? I would say, yeah, it's obviously different today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, right? And so, but is it still primarily at the same spot on the OSI model? And I'm asking it for a very specific reason. So how many of your AV deployment solutions do you have across your campus in your standardized environments are ever at the application level that your clients outside of the UI that's on a touch panel?
I guess I'd have to, because so much of what we do are on finished systems, and it is purely application. You're not changing a single thing, but the issue I run into here is that ostensibly that sort of support should be done by another group, or that sort of development should be done by another group, but it's happening in a classroom, and thus it falls back to my team. So, and
a lot of organizations look at that centralized deployment of IT solutions like that. You probably look at people who do that, and it's probably huge. You probably have a team of people that are doing that, but that's that classical view. It's like, we need to deploy these solutions, and usually 9 times out of 10, it's either web or it's an application delivery on a computer, not these wholesale closed systems that you and I and everybody else on this call work on, right? So what we do day in and day out, they have very little awareness of it, and it makes them a little bit nervous. You're like, wait, you're dealing with endpoints, you're dealing with things that are on a network. Why is that not in our domain, and why are you doing it, and how are you more prepared for it and trained than I am? And so you're set up for contention out of the gate to say, like, with that whole replication of service again, right? And that becomes that revolving conversation about, I know you do something that looks a whole hell of a lot like what I do, but why do you do it and why am I not doing it? And so now you start having questions like that creates anxiety. Like, shit, one of us can be eliminated, right?
Yeah.
So there's that conversation, that anxiety that exists between the ebb and flow of the task. Like, right, what's the actual true task that we are doing?
You know what's funny is that, we have that ITAV clashing at our university, like everybody does. But it's different than what you described, Mark, and it's similar though at the same time. Ours mainly revolve around that analog environment and why we can't spec the same boxes for every room, right? Or whatever we're specing. Like, why does that have to be different than here? Why are you doing something different over here than over here? Well, it's a standard experience. So I have a lot of conversations of trying to prove the worth of what we're doing, if you will. Like, oh, well, why are you making things so complicated, Justin? Why is this happening in this room, like I said, and not over here? And then it takes an hour or 2 hours maybe, or 15 emails to explain this versus just going out and doing things and keeping our, what we call standards versus what IT says is a standard is, you need the same processor and the same touch panel and the same projector in every room, no matter what. No.
But I think there's a gross misunderstanding of that analog assessment.
Right.
Like, in that you have all been in the meeting or a project manager or somebody on architect says, what's your standard screen size you use in all your rooms?
Don't have one.
You can't even answer that question. You cannot answer that question. And so
well, you might.
If you have
doing
one
it wrong.
size, if you truly have one size room and everything is that way, then yes, you can answer that question. But we know that that's not the reality that we live in. And so I think by and large, there's a misunderstanding of what it is that the AV folks do. Right? And you're like, you guys are out there doing stuff. You got ladders, and like that just seems like a lot of hard work. Like, what's going on? Like, why are you doing that?
A lot of the times you have to kind of question their questions. Like, well, do you put the same size of TV in your kitchen as your living room? Well, no. Well, tell me why you don't do that.
Put the larger one.
And then
in the bathroom.
they start realizing, oh, well, maybe I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
So
no, they don't.
So
And I think one of the issues here, we talked about this in the past, about AV encompasses so much of what IT would consider different departments. I mean, you've got your software applications, you've got your hardware deployment, you've
security,
got your security, you got physical installation and infrastructure, you have project management, you have customer service, you have all these different aspects, which in a larger IT world, each get their own little group to do that because it fits in different buckets. Whereas AV is this weird outlier of like, well, no, we do all of that, but for our stuff and how this, and so it's just, I could see where it's breaking the model on things, and people don't know where it sits. So go ahead, Jamie. Sorry.
Where do you go? No, that actually leads better into my question. Is we're all kind of going through these transitions. We all hear scuttlebutt. We all know reorganizations happen all the time. So if we're in that situation and the question comes up, where do you believe we belong? Like ideally, and because it was just asked to me, and my question was, well, it makes a lot of sense for most of us, including myself, to be with the infrastructure folks who are with even the facilities folks. Not that we need to be facilities, but we are. And it makes a lot of sense. But IS makes a lot of sense too. So to me, it's like, let's flip a coin and I don't really care as long as the money's always there. Where do you guys think? Where do we belong? Or what would your preferred
one
be?
Point real quick is that be careful with the facilities thing because they get outsourced quicker than IT. So just an FYI on that. I've seen that around different universities where we've done it. Our facilities group was outsourced and now Sodexo manages them, and they are not WKU employees, except for like a really small group of project managers that have to work with those people, but they work on campus every day. They have parking tags just like everybody else. So, if in my opinion, I feel that AV belongs in IT with the exception of I want a better understanding of what we do. Oh, you don't have, or you can't put the same boxes in every room. Oh, this system over here has to be a little different than this one over here. Oh, you do have to put feet on the ground, even though you can monitor all your systems. That would be, I think, the best of both worlds. But will that exist? Probably not.
I think a lot of this conversation is, how do we get here? And what does it mean? And I have a couple different versions of what has happened and why it is that we do the things we do. And if I look at my department and many of the folks who are here, a lot of them come out of some type of event world, whether it be live sound, video engineering, sports production, whatever it may be. And to them, the show must go on. This must get done one way or another. And through their careers, they've been highly adaptable by picking up the skill set that is needed to make sure that the show goes on. And so when it came time to it, they needed to become IP proficient. What did they do? They learned it and they did it. And so I think that's the lesson that we need to really think about, and don't get into the trap of single occupation identity. All of your jobs will change, and everybody's going to have to live on some version of constant change that's going to happen. Be able to adapt and learn fast. That's going to be the moral. So however the alignment is, if you're saying this is IT, is always going to be IT, that's very binary. That's like, I'm doing this one thing. That's not the way of the world. You will need to change. And so we've been effective. We've actually, in my opinion, outpaced traditional IT because we've been able to adapt and actually learn new skill sets on the fly and have success with that faster than somebody who goes and gets a 4-year certificate in this and says, I'm the IT wizard, know-it-all. Great, you were on 4-year-old technology. Cool. Guess what? We're over here. We're picking up skill sets. We're moving. We're being agile. So I think we've actually historically aligned our staff to learn how to learn. And I think that's the important piece of it. And so whichever way the organization goes, stay nimble and stay adaptable to be able to learn whatever the new thing is. And I think people in an AV background already have that innate skill set.
And to your point, Mark, I hear a lot of IT folks, not only at WKU, but other places where, I've never seen that box before. We're not going to do that. We don't support it. Sorry. I want the same network switches. I want the same configurations. I want the same blah to make my life easier because we only have this many people and they can only do so much. So and it's a good reason, but it can't be black and white. There's just no way even that policy can exist.
Yeah, so we wear multiple hats because we're good at it. And
Yeah.
so, and that's what makes it kind of a little bit contentious with people who just want to have a really perfect bureaucracy of this is one person, one task. That's actually not the way of the future.
And I'll add, just to kind of be the devil's advocate, the counterpoint to all this is I actually joined UNCG because we were under learning technologies. Like, to me, and my nerdy background, or what really makes me excited, is the questions of why and those type of things. The systems I can do all day long. It's dealing with the faculty and learning how to better support teaching and learning. And I think if we lose that, Justin was talking about being outsourced. We have a really unique niche in here where we are exposed to the same client over and over again, that we develop learning spaces. And the better we get at supporting teaching and learning, the more effective we will be and the better the results in those spaces. If we focus too much on just the equipment, on just the infrastructure, on just that side of it, we are able to be outsourced by any contractor out there.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're right, Larry. You're right. That's
the scenario here is that there is a contractor of convenience, but it has become so convenient to use them to the point where even end user faculty were being told to contact them directly for things. I put a stop to that immediately and said that no, look, we own the space, we're responsible for it. It's not a good look to have us just say, oh yeah, just call these guys and have them come work on it. Because then the question comes up, well, then why are you here then? So what's your purpose here? And Jamie, to your earlier question is like where we fit. I think, and to Larry's point there, I think it's the two natural spots to me anyway are in the infrastructure networking kind of structured cable group for one aspect, but there is that critical client-facing academic, development side of things where you almost want to straddle over to like the faculty development or the learning and teaching center, that group who works with faculty on pedagogy side of things, and kind of because you have to kind of sit in between those. And that's, I think, toward the genesis of our discussion here, that's why AV, academic AV, university AV is tough to pigeonhole, because you have these different aspects and you have to have these different skill sets. And you can, and there are many schools out there who do it, who are entirely functionally a structured cable infrastructure group, and they don't have any sort of actual integration, development, or even any sort of interaction with the academic side of things. They just let another group on campus do that, and that's generally in that sort of scenario. You will also find that their systems in general were designed by an outside firm or an outside consultant, and they've been doing the same thing for 6 or 7 years. And in another 6 or 7 years, they'll hire another group to come in and tell them what to do again. So all that needs analysis will get boiled down to a 90-day period every 5 years. And they're going to have these, yes, very cookie cutter and probably very supportable, but very, standard, not unusual in any way, very vanilla spaces that are, based on stuff from years earlier. So it's a challenge. And Mark, like you said, to stay nimble, it's all about developing these new skill sets and determining what's new in the spaces. And we've been talking recently here anyway, I've been really harping on, wireless sharing boxes, because they don't go into Zoom. And yet that was the big thing a couple of years ago, is let's get wireless out there everywhere so people can share their stuff wirelessly. Well, first of all, we found very quickly that people didn't care about all the fancy features and just want to make this screen appear on that screen. Well, now they find out that this screen appearing on that screen doesn't appear in the larger virtual screen outside of the room in Zoom. So why do we have all these things now? And so it's one of those things where you have to stay nimble and point out that you can get stuff into Zoom, and there's ways to do that and all that, so you can be part of those classes. But if you're simply a structured cable group, you're like, well, no, the box I put in there 3 years ago works fine. I can see it on my console. I can talk to it. It's up to date. So there is no problem in the room. But the problem isn't so much a technology, this isn't working, as much as this isn't working for what I'm trying to do now. And if you're not nimble and you're not able to build those skill sets, then you find yourself kind of behind the 8 ball on that. So any last thoughts on where we sit in the IT organization and why?
We sit everywhere, all over the place.
Excellent. I love it.
A little bit of everything.
We sit around. When you sit around IT, you really sit around IT. I get it.
Large.
So grow your department. Get everybody on high carbohydrate diets. The more of you there is, then the better you'll sit in the IT organization. Apparently.
Watch out, we're taking over.
So let's take a quick break.
As many of you know, the Super Friends have always been better received when we have more input from you. So here's your chance. Send us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and get involved with the show. We're looking for some topics to discuss, some fellow nerds to talk to, or just general AV awesomeness to brag about. But remember, we'll probably steal your ideas. And I suppose we'd take some criticism, but that wouldn't be very nice. Anyway, drop us a note at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com and find out how quickly we ask you to join this nonsense.
So for our final segment this week, we want to talk about touchless AV, touchless interfaces, touchless UI. And I think the way I described it at the beginning is why touchless AV is a bad idea, or is it? And I do want to preface that by saying it's probably not something you want to do in every one of your spaces, though there may be spaces where it kind of makes sense. So I guess the question is out there, where does it make sense to do that, or to investigate that? And why are we looking at things like this, and what sort of need is it solving for? But I'm just going to throw this one out to the panel. What are you guys seeing out there as far as touchless interfaces, touchless AV at your institutions? Just in a general sense, not because yes, there's always going to be those oddball outlier spaces, but I mean, kind of in the more general sense. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I think this really came up recently over the last 18 months. But recently, it's because just this inane or this insane marketing push to everything's touchless. Don't touch anything. Look what we can do touchless. From Amazon to whatever, your homes, whatever. And so now that we have folks back on campus, it's coming up more, and I scoff a lot. I'm like, this is, and what I find myself when I really think about it is I scoff at the what I feel is the mainstream idea of touchless is the Alexas or Hey Siris or Hey Google, or what's the new one? Now you can customize it, be Hey Classroom.
So you're describing walking into a space and just shouting at something,
yelling,
and
or
something shouts back. Yes,
or
gotcha.
or a Bluetooth beacon, or it just kind of knows you're there, or so facial identification. It's the same with all this AI stuff. And on the surface, I just scoff a lot because the world we live in is so diverse and it's so dynamic. We're not even K-12, right? I mean, a single classroom could have up to 12 different instructors of different cultures a day, right? And or more. But at least in K-12, you walk in, it's the same voice, the same person, the same face. You can get away with some things. And that's my on the surface thing. And then I dig a little deeper, and I still find it as frustrating because I've had some questions about, can we put a pin code on our touch panel or something or other? Or can we put a wiki on there? How do we do this help thing? And I said, look, we can use QR codes and things. But what I've discovered this other way, even with technicians, is great. I had this QR code that says, you don't have to touch me, just scan this thing. Then it takes you to a web interface. But then we have to keep track of logins, right? Because we can't just have... It's never just that easy on campuses. You guys know how this works. If it's available to the public, it's got to have 17 logins. So it's never just, you just scan the thing and it goes. Because then they leave the room and they're still connected. Because they're still on the campus network. And we just get into all these complexities, like Justin brought up earlier. Well, we'll just put a temporary one on the computer. That's great, except that our computer people don't ever want the computer actually talking to anything else in the room, because it's a security concern. And so touch panels on the computer is taboo. And so there's all these hoops to jump through. And so it may be something that, and I'm with Larry, the gesture one just drives me bonkers. This because I think you look stupid. I mean,
There's people dancing
like
in front of the room, clapping. And
yeah,
screaming.
I like it as the novelty. I like it as a museum piece. I like it as, it's I paid my fare and I want the show. That kind of thing. I like it. But for everyday use, I don't. So I really scoff a lot at the idea of touchless, and not just because it sounds stupid that everything's connected to Alexa. But the other part is it just never seems to work right. And it's another level of training that breaks down, and it causes bad feelings, and bad feelings causes bad reviews, and bad reviews causes poor performance, right? So you have all this cascading things. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? That's my side.
And I've been one of the most vocal critics against it, so I feel like I need to kind of defend my position and why I don't do
Come
it.
in, get in the ring. Get in here. We want to hear you. Get in.
And first off, I'm not against all touchless. I think there are some aspects like that hot plug when you plug in an HDMI and it turns on the system automatically and it just works. Absolutely. But my entire principle, if I put something in a classroom, is it reduces classroom emergencies. Anything I put in there needs to make the system simpler for the end user to use. Otherwise, we're having to put boots on the ground more often, and we've just talked about how that's a big no-no. So if I go in there and I have to train the 12 different professors who teach in this room this day to say, hey, classroom, turn on projector and show PC, and if they accidentally say, hey, classroom, turn on screen and show computer, it won't work. I'm opening myself up to a lot of training opportunities. I don't want training opportunities for that.
Risk aversion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you all. You know, I don't design touchless in any classroom currently. We do touchless, if you will, kind of, you know, Larry stole my thunder on that, where you plug in HDMI, your display turns on, you know, things happen and it works. It's not CEC, but there's a processor behind there and you just don't have anything to touch. There's no remote. Well, you know,
Except that dirty cable, which is covered with all sorts of random.
It's like the one thing.
Usually the volumes, you know, controls on your laptop and different things like.
We're not going to talk about the doorknobs though.
Yeah,
those,
or the PCs.
The door opens
to
automatically for you. They all have automatic openers, so you don't have to touch them. So that works out perfect in conference rooms. You know, we haven't done any QR codes, but I would classify the QR code thing. You know, to Jamie's point, they walk away and it's still connected. Yeah, you're spot on with that. I would put that as a emergency mitigation point if you have spun something like that up and tested it and said, hey, okay, we have, you know, I hear you, faculty, it's not working, or whatever the case. Go to this web page on the computer, scan the QR code, and your AV system's up and running today. Sorry for the inconvenience. We'll get it fixed tomorrow. However that plays out. That's a mitigation point. Putting control on a computer. Our department is responsible for the classroom computers, so that works out in our favor sometimes. We don't do that all the time. Most of the time that happens whenever a touch panel dies and there's no money to fix it, and we have to put a virtual touch panel right there on the computer until they come up with the money. So that's kind of my spiel, but you guys already hit the points. It's not sustainable. It's not really supportable until AI or whatever somebody's going to do later that starts getting this stuff figured out that's more intelligent to fix all of the issues that I've pointed out. Then we can maybe talk more serious about it.
And I think that's the key, Justin. When AI is smart enough to understand what you mean and take into account all the different dialects of those who might be in the room.
And different ways to say, like, hey, y'all, turn on this thing and do this.
Yeah, the Kentucky
right?
aspect of it at that point.
Like, you just drop down the box and say Kentucky dialect and you're good to go for that classroom.
And then
the next person is. Right.
And West Virginia. I've got them surrounded.
Oh, that's too good. That's too good.
Appalachia. So yes, I mean, there's obviously pain points.
All right, so does
to
anybody
this.
actually like this?
So
here,
I'm going to preface kind of my
maybe
stance on this, that you all, or y'all, depending on which version of where you are.
All y'all.
Yeah.
Bless your heart.
You all have actually described some of the advantages of what it will be like when these things actually work correctly. And so the point that I will kind of do my best to kind of bring up is that as it stands right now, in today's snapshot moment in time, it is not perfected. It's not. But coming soon to a room near you will be touchless AV, whether you like it or not.
Soon. Like
within
5 years, 10
within
years?
the average tenure of the people that are listening to this show at their current position. I'll give you that.
Justin, here's how it's going to happen. You're going to have a department
me.
who's going to go buy a system from somebody like a Logitech, somebody like that. It's like a second tier, prosumerish sort of thing. Yep. That will have voice control, and it will work enough for them that they will be using that until it stops working, at which point they're going to call you, and you're going to find this thing they've had for 3 months that is no longer working the way it should, or something like that. But it's going to be somebody's going to buy a package like that from an IT box house, and then they're just going to drop it in there, and that's how it's going to sneak onto campus.
To me, I don't think it's in the voice control realm. I'm looking at my crystal ball, I don't think that's where it's at. And so I'll tell you why I think it's going to happen one way or another, is because we are in the age of sensors. You may not know it or not. We live in cheap, super low cost sensing agents that exist, whether it be in your phone, whether it be in the ceiling tile, whether it be in the light fixture, whatever it may be. And we are also in the realm of deep data and AI around that. And so the expectations will be that when I walk into a space, the space is intelligent to know that I am who I am by whatever sensors I may have with me, whether it be my watch, my cell phone, or the students are there with their sensors in their pockets as well. And the experience can be tailored for me as such. Now, obviously, that's not right this moment today, but you all see the tools in which we could build this today, right? You know, we can get them off the shelf. We could deploy this. And so wouldn't it behoove us to agree that that experience is going to be asked of us to create in a teaching and learning environment to reduce all the things you guys just said? Why did you put the control when the HDMI cable was plugged in? So you didn't have to do that repetitive push the button to begin this. You automated a task that was you didn't deem needed to be there in the first place.
All right. So devil's advocate, are these sensors wired or wireless?
Doesn't matter.
You're playing devil's advocate on a devil's advocate?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
So
I'm
it's like a
double
double
downing
negative.
on the devil's advocate.
So
say that 4 times.
The question you're asking me is basing a decision based on the current knowledge base of your IT infrastructure. That's not what I'm asking right now. I'm saying as we mature with our networks and how our networks are deployed, we'll be more intelligent about the data that goes through them to make best use of those sensors to create those experiences.
Can I object?
I think so
because
You can.
you want to object first or me object first?
We can
I don't-
debate it.
I'm
yeah.
not objecting.
object to Larry
double
objecting.
I'm objecting because you're taking the conversation is touchless technology right now, and you're saying right now it's crap, but perhaps in the future
10 years.
we can get there.
I think
10
the
years is
sum
too far.
total of the parts that exist right now could make it better if the people that are deploying them would not resist deploying it and designing those experiences intentionally today.
So I agree with Mark on that point too, because I was asked to do some of this stuff, and it wasn't until I started saying, okay, look, I can tie it to Bluetooth beacons, I can tie it to, at the time you use thumbprints, but I know that's not touchless, but whatever. I can tie it. I can tie it to your Wi-Fi thing. I can tie it to these things, but as soon as I said, but you have to start enabling these discovery methods and these sensors, you personally have to give up and say, fine, I know I'm already being tracked because I carry an iPhone, but I need to consciously understand that I really am allowing me to be tracked. And it all went to crap. So I do agree with Mark the fact that all of it's there. It's set up to absolutely be there.
Now let me ask.
I just am not ready to say.
But
that
if it was a perfect
mainstream
world
deal,
and you weren't as busy as you are, being redundantly working and putting labor towards things that may already be able to be automated, if you had the capacity to do this, would you do it? Or
absolutely.
Or are you speaking from a place of fear of it not working correctly?
For me, I've already jacked with it, right? So because me personally, I'm a nerd. I wanted to do it, but when it doesn't work, I fix it, right? Which means that if I have to fix my own problem, then I definitely don't want it out there.
Sure,
I
don't want to deal with
I
it.
think kind of what Jamie's saying, your buy-in's going to be a problem, because these
From who?
universities have a lot of
Faculty.
people.
You think so? You
Faculty
think
are
faculty?
resistant to, some faculty don't have cell phones.
Well, and
how do
we've-
you?
My technology champion faculty would be like, hell yeah, let's do it.
Well,
sure.
We've recently
Yeah.
required multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
Putting that on the faculty's personal cell
boy.
phones, that went over real well.
Well, we did it. We moved past it. To me,
but
that's the
don't you have
opportunity.
The little key for people who don't want to use that. Where's my key?
No.
But-
no, unfortunately, we should have, but
This
or
thing.
that was not the way we decided to go. But your argument is so far you've said in the future, in a perfect world. Those are your two qualifiers.
But right now, you're all speaking that you're steadfast. No, this is not going to be a thing. I'm trying to tell you that it is going to be a thing.
Let me clarify
As much
something
as you
here.
want to kick and scream,
HDBB.
this will happen.
Yeah.
Let me clarify this. So, are we talking about touchless and whatever we're talking about replacing or adding on to the touching experience? What are we
Exactly.
saying
Yes.
All of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Now,
So, Justin, let me give you a scenario here because this can be done. In fact, I did it years ago, Mark, to the exact scenario you described. If somebody schedules a room and they know when that call is supposed to start, sort of thing, and you have a motion sensor in the room, so the call doesn't start unless there's a motion sensor that detects a body. Now, it's not smart enough to know who that body is. The assumption is if you walk in at 1:59 p.m. for your 2 p.m. meeting, it's probably you. The system turns on, the system knows who to call or which call to answer sort of thing, and it starts up, and you can actually jump into that call, join that meeting without touching a single thing other than your butt to a chair. And that's all something that's off the shelf. You can do that right now. So in the right environment, you could deploy hundreds of those.
Justin, you're doing it right now because you opted to have Zoom rooms.
We're doing it now because of the Zoom rooms.
Exactly.
So we're basing it all on a schedule. And they go in there and they have to touch the keyboard and they have to log in to that.
But
and
I think
they have
what
to touch the
Mark
mouse
is saying
and they have to do this.
is if you replace that, somebody logging in and clicking start or whatever, just identifying that I'm here, if you replace that with beacon on phone or Wi-Fi location thing or whatever says this person is in the room at this time, within 5 minutes either way, I'm going to start that call. Does that become low friction enough to I can just walk into the room and say, okay, class, and that thing started up a minute ago and I see the other people sort of thing?
So I'm with you all on, so far we've talked about startup and shutdown and scheduling and in the room and not in the room. But I want my volume to be 10% higher and I want my microphone to go lower over here. And then I want to switch inputs and I want to do, I want to freeze my projector. Yeah. Because freezing projector images is a hot thing. Like we get that requested
Justin,
in every
that's all
classroom.
coming in a future software update.
So I'm just saying there's a lot going on with some of our advanced systems. Like,
this kind of goes back to that question I had when we talked about our structure, like that application user layer of things, right? We've done things the way we have because we identified that this is the best way we should be doing it. And we've resisted that change. We're being asked to do more smarter with the data that we have. Do you guys, true or false, is there more data available to you in the teaching and learning environment today? You don't think there is? I think there certainly is.
But we're not capturing that.
Yeah, I was going to say,
that's two different
smart enough
things.
to capture it, but yes.
But here's the thing: we all don't necessarily operate at the top of our certification. You all have probably had conversations with your network engineers and said, "Hey, can we do this?" And I say, "Well, we could, but we don't have the staff to do that, right?"
Or
and so
it falls out of our realm, right? And because we don't want to, because it's a special configuration that we have to support that we don't have the manpower to support.
And I'm not here to convince all of you that this is the thing you're going to do. I'm just saying, hey, understand that this trend is coming, and it will become more affordable by the sensing that we have. Our networks becoming more intelligent and the demands of our faculty to have a more personalized experience. All of those things exist right now. We can deliver those things. Don't keep your head in the sand and pretend that it's not going to change. You will adopt some level of this in the future because the expectation is going to be there.
I can give you the beacon. It's the way touchless technology is expected right now. Most people right now want to say, hello, Siri, whatever.
You're talking again, shouting into the room.
That.
Yeah.
The disconnect here is
and the AV system talks back to you, gives you feedback, right? Like Siri does.
What is being marketed today and what the expectations of the home environment are is what's defining quote touchless interactions today. Yes, Mark, I think you're right on, and I think a lot of us see that trend, but let's go wrap that back around and just say, but today I scoff a lot because it is not what we all know is coming with sensors and beacons and things. But it all harkens back to the, hey, whatever, hey, computer, do this thing for me. And and it sweetly talks to you and says, of course, my master. Right. Well, but it doesn't. That's not how we deploy things. So that's why we scoff today.
Yeah, another way it could be done is what Walmart's doing now and all these other people is, facial recognition on cameras. What are we doing in the classrooms right now? Putting cameras in all these classrooms. And, okay, so if that right person walks in and 20 years from now it recognizes their face, how adopted would that technology be, right? I mean...
how many people run some variant of a centralized metrics gathering tool on your campus? We know all the flavors, the fusions of the world, and yada, yada, yada. Like you're parsing data now, and you will be adaptable because you're going to be asked to make sense of that data, right? We know, part of touchless is like knowing and being able to predict, like, hey, I'm at the end of the life of this thing, right? I don't want to have to go in there and manually do this, but I can make a data-driven decision. And so that's what we're really asking ourselves. The sensors are there, the technology exists, and yes, it may be not today, not tomorrow, But we're going to see that. We're going to see the proliferation of more data devices and sensors in room as they become more cost effective, and we will be asked to make smarter environments for our faculty and our universities.
And a lot of those sensors are there already by the facilities group to turn off lights and to adjust HVAC and things like that. So it's tying into larger building systems, which may already exist. Nobody's opened the door to this floor or walked down this hallway in the last 10 minutes. So we're not even going to turn on that AV system, even though it's, Justin, like you said, you got a scheduled Zoom call, which starts at 2:00. Well, it's not even going to start because it knows there's nobody there, or there's somebody in there sleeping. But
I've been involved in a lot of we're in the purchase of a new wireless RFP set up here, and just the amount of data that those access points are gathering now is amazing.
Yeah. It's coming, man. So, I mean, again, I don't think we're going to agree that today, the way that we're deploying, but I think if you're listening to this, be willing to think a little bit differently than maybe how you design and what you deliver and what the hooks are for people to have the ability to control with something as simple as what's in their pocket or whatever it may be. That, let's be adaptable and let's think about different ways to solve problems.
And keep in mind that your security team is going to want to be involved. So when you walk into your room and you say, hey, classroom, turn on projector, it will want you to authenticate with your two-factor authentication to prove it's actually you. And it will stop you dead right there, and that's going to end your experiment. So
it's the blood test that gets me every time.
Yes. Put some blood on the document camera and zoom way in, and we'll take a look and make sure that's really you. So.
And the
DNA test.
The alcohol sensor on the microphone.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Well,
is that a problem at your school? Like, I don't know how to react to that.
You have a breathalyzer thing?
So you
Spaces
have a
are smart.
on your microphone.
Be smarter than your smart
Jamie
spaces.
has a lot of drunk teachers.
Might make class more interesting. Might make a show more interesting.
Well, we've managed to ruin yet another episode of AV Super Friends Off the Rails. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. If you complain loud enough, we might just invite you on the show.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV Super Friends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.